Abbott has been in Melbourne this morning and spoke to reporters ahead of a community forum. Let's bring that doorstop interview to you now.
This is typical of the tens of thousands of small businesses right around Australia that are going to be hit by the carbon tax. And what that means is that you, the customer, is going to be hit too. That's the way the carbon tax works. It drives up costs for business, and that means it drives up costs for customers. That's why this is going to be a wrecking ball rolling through our economy. That's why it's bad for families' cost of living, bad for jobs, bad for our international competitiveness. And one of the things that is often obscured in the debate about July 1 is that the carbon tax is scheduled to go up and up and up. It starts off at $23 a tonne, but the government's own papers say that it will be $37 a tonne by 2020 and an unbelievable and astronomical $350 a tonne by 2050. So this is the threat we face starting from the 1st of July this year. It's more and more obvious that even the most mainstream of business leaders are becoming increasingly concerned about Australia as a place to do business. We had Marius Kloppers last night warning that Australia had gone from being a low-cost place to mine to being a high-cost place to mine, and the carbon tax was specifically nominated by Marius Kloppers as one of the issues which is driving up our costs. We have a paper from the Business Council of Australia out today, the most orthodox, mainstream business organisation, pointing out that the costs of development are 40% higher in Australia now than in the United States, and productivity in the United States is 30% higher in the United States than here in Australia. Now, it's the investments that happen today which determine our prosperity tomorrow, and that's why this is such bad news for our future prosperity. It's all very well saying that things aren't too bad now, but what about tomorrow? And tomorrow depends upon the decisions made today, and the worst possible decision is to hit our economy with the world's biggest carbon tax at the worst possible time. Just on the subject of costs, before I ask Tony Smith to say a few words in support of local business here, the Prime Minister is playing catch-up politics on the subject of childcare. What we've got from a Prime Minister today is just another talk fest to deal with a problem which has just got worse under her government and which is going to continue to get worse under her problem. Since the last election, back in August of 2010, under Julia Gillard's watch, childcare costs have increased by a full 17%. And all the talk today is not going to get costs down. There was nothing in the budget for childcare, so what's happening today is just a bit of window dressing from a Prime Minister who is hoping to talk up next week's news poll. Tony?
Well, thank you very much, Tony, and thank you, Alex, for having us. What you've seen today is a quality small business in the Casey electorate here in the heart of the Yarra Valley, doing great work. They have great challenges like all manufacturers, and with the carbon tax they're going to have a great impost placed upon them and making their product less affordable for homeowners. It's going to force up not just the price of kitchens, the price of homes as well. They're doing it tough. They know that this impost will come and it'll make a difficult situation worse. This business is a quality business. It's like so many others across the Casey electorate. Light manufacturing, it's a small business of about 20 people that's been in operation for 20 years. And the carbon tax coming on July 1, and as Tony said, then escalating up like an escalator in a shopping centre, is going to increase cost pressures on them that have to be passed on to mums and dads, not just across Casey, but right across Australia. And what you've seen here this morning is the sort of scenario that thousands and thousands of small businesses in the outer east, Casey and adjoining electorates face, and of course right around Australia.
How will bipartisan target of that 5% reduction that we all want to see by 2020?
Well, direct action will go with the grain of business, further encouraging and supporting business to do what they're already doing. You see, every business, every sensible business wants to get its power bills down. Every sensible business wants to get its fuel bills down. Australian business over the last 2 decades has actually reduced its emissions intensity by 50% without a carbon tax. And what the direct action policy will do is provide significant additional incentives to encourage business to do more of what they are already doing to get their bills down.
But at what cost, though? The Treasury's already made it clear that this will come at a significant cost. Direct action won't necessarily be efficient. What cost will it cost us as taxpayers?
Well, we've already identified the cost. We will spend exactly what we have budgeted, and what we have budgeted is about $1 billion a year, paid for from savings in the budget. We will go to the market and we will buy the best and most affordable emissions reduction strategies from the market.
Are you concerned about the former AFP officer that's come forward with allegations that he was offered a promotion to make the AWB inquiry go away while you're in government?
Look, I'm just not aware of those reports, just not aware of them.
I find it hard to believe, Tony Abbott. You've got 2 media advisors here. I'm sure you're all over the news the whole 24-hour media cycle. So what are your thoughts about it?
As I said, I'm afraid I haven't yet read the newspapers. I'm not aware of that report, so I just can't comment on it.
Tony Abbott, what do you say to voters that find it concerning that you're not across the newspapers today?
Well, I am across the issues that matter to Australian people. And what matters to the Australian people is securing their jobs and keeping their cost of living down. And the best way that I can do that is to abolish the carbon tax as quickly as is humanly possible on coming into government. And one of the reasons why the Prime Minister's leadership is so insecure at the moment is because Kevin Rudd is telling people that it is not too late to move from $23 a tonne to at least what is the current European market price for carbon.
What are your thoughts on the latest chapter of the Craig Thompson saga with the sex worker? I'm not sure if you're sleeping him or not.
Well, again, it's the Prime Minister who's relying on Mr Thompson's vote, and so I'll leave the Prime Minister to comment on these matters.
So you're talking before about the increase in childcare costs under Gillard. So how will the coalition government do any better, considering the Conservative government's acknowledging that users should pay, that people should just pay their own way?
Well, as I said earlier, the Prime Minister is playing catch-up politics here. The Coalition announced a few weeks ago that we are committed to a more flexible and more effective childcare system, and that's why we are going to have a full Productivity Commission review of how we can make childcare more affordable and more flexible and more accommodating of the real life of modern Australian families. So many families...
Policy and how it looks. I mean, another review you put down that's all fixed today. Do the public want another review, or they want an idea of how you're going to fix it?
Well, what I think the public want to know is that we get it when it comes to the work patterns of modern Australian families. There are lots and lots of Australian families these days that don't work 9 to 5, and that's why it's important that we don't just have the traditional 8 to 6 model of childcare. I understand this because Margie, my wife, works in the childcare sector. I know all about the issues of childcare because they're discussed around the kitchen table in the Abbott household every other day. And what we need is a childcare system which accommodates the reality of the modern Australian family. We don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction to a few bad opinion polls, which is what we've got from the Prime Minister at the moment. What we want is a proper, lasting system, and the best way to get that is to have a thorough review from the Productivity Commission.
So, last question from the ABC, no problem. You were quoted on Tuesday as saying that this economy is in pretty bad shape. Data yesterday says dramatically otherwise. So how do you rate yourself at the moment as an economic manager when you've got it so wrong?
Well, rate me as an economic manager on the basis of the results when my colleagues and I were in government. Now, if you look at the record between 1996 and 2007, we had more than 2 million new jobs, we had a 20% increase in real wages, and we had real net wealth per person in this country doubled. The wealth of every Australian in real terms doubled when the Howard government was in power. And when I was a senior minister, when the coalition was putting its policies into place. Now, what we've seen since then, we've seen productivity.
A bit of good news yesterday in a bit of a flat economic period, an opportunity for the opposition to be positive.
And I think a lot of Australians today are saying, look, sure, we had some encouraging figures, and good figures are always welcome, but a lot of Australians today are saying Wayne Swan does not live in the same world that we inhabit. He's running around patting himself on the back, calling himself the world's greatest treasurer. What I see people are saying is shops closing down, my job under pressure, my wages under pressure, my costs going up, and look, we're all delighted to see that the mining industry is still strong, and we're all thrilled that the mining industry is carrying the Australian economy. But the point I keep making is you don't speed up the slow lane by slowing down the fast lane, which is what the mining tax is going to do, and you don't clobber the whole economy with a carbon tax, which is what the Treasurer is proposing to do. So, look, let's be grateful for small mercies, and that's what I suppose those figures yesterday were. But economic management does not depend on the occasional good statistic. Economic management depends upon consistent good policy, and that's what we haven't had from this government.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so that was the opposition leader, Tony Abbott, speaking to reporters in Melbourne earlier today. He says the Prime Minister is playing catch-up on childcare with that summit on in Sydney today. He says childcare costs have increased by 17% under Labor. Julia Gillard says the percentage of family income spent on childcare has actually gone down.